Though we are all born with the basic structural elements of the pelvic rotator cuff, it takes the first 2 to 3 years of life for the PRC to develop in tone and function. The infant spends most of the time on his back, moving arms and legs into flexion and extension patterns. Improved muscle resting tone facilitates movement of the head upright in prone and supported sitting postures. The trunk becomes more stable in sitting simultaneously with general tone increases. This in turn facilitates the beginnings of hip stability in sitting and all fours. In all fours, both shoulder and pelvic rotator cuff muscles gain strength and function through weight shifts. The abdominal muscles activate against gravity to stabilize the trunk between the shoulders and hips. Over and over, with each series of weight shifts, the rotator cuff muscles reflexively contract and inhibit to maintain balance over the 4-point base of support. Gradually, weight shift leads to unweighting of opposite arm and leg for forward progression in crawling. The pelvic rotator cuff action facilitates mid-range pelvic and hip rotation and lumbosacral stability during crawling. The child next arises to half kneel. During half kneel, the child isolates one leg in hip extension while the other hip is flexed. Weight shifts in this position develop the PRC in preparation for walking when the hips are acting in opposite flexion-extension patterns. When movement and stability over half-knee base of support becomes easy, the child pulls to standing. The standing position increases the demand on the pelvic rotator cuff in order to maintain balance with mid-range rotation through the pelvis and extended hip. In supported standing, the child bounces up and down, repeating the cycle of external and internal mid-range rotation, strengthening the PRC muscles. Initially, the standing base of support is wide in hip abduction and outward rotation. Later, the child cruises, that is, walks sideways around furniture. The first phase of forward walking is over a wide base of support, with arms, legs, and trunk working as one unit. Gradually, the base narrows as the hips adduct and internally rotate. Over a 6 to 12-month period of practice, the pelvic rotator cuff integrates abduction external rotation with adduction internal rotation, and the base of support narrows while hands lower from the guarded position. A 2-year-old's reciprocal arm swing and forward motion of alternate legs becomes separated from trunk motion. During this phase, the pelvic rotator cuff is key in developing dynamic stability throughout the pelvis, hips, knees, and ankle. At the same time, the child practices reciprocal hip-leg motions in other daily activities, such as climbing on furniture or toys. Sophisticated upright walking develops simultaneously with bladder and bowel control in the first 2 to 3 years of life. Stimulation from the autonomic nervous system and peripheral motor pathways influence resting tone of the pelvic rotator cuff and smooth muscle of the bladder and bowel. As the child progresses from digesting mother's milk to processing fruits, vegetables, and meats, nervous system directs the bowel, bladder, and rotator cuff in a progressively more sophisticated manner. From birth to 2 to 3 years of age, elimination is controlled primarily by the pons of the subcortex. Upon receiving the afferent message of bladder stretching, an efferent message is sent to the pelvic muscles, which release and eliminate the urine or feces without concern for time and place. Between 3 and 4 years of age, cortical inhibitory control of elimination becomes successful and the child can wait to get to the toilet. Thus, in the span of 3 to 4 years, the child progresses from supine kicking and lack of bladder and bowel control to walking and independent toileting. A major component of that progression is the improved sophistication of pelvic rotator cuff function.